Hey guys, Selwyn here from WynnStrength.com, bringing you the final and fourth day of the week 6 of the Powerbuilding 2 template by Barbell Medicine. Today is going to be overhead press as the main movement. There's overhead press with belt, followed by stiff-legged deadlifts, and then some close grip bench press. So if some of you have been following me, you'll know that I have been dealing with a shoulder issue in the right hand shoulder. So I did first set of warm-ups, 15 reps with the empty barbell, and it felt a bit tender. I felt a weird pinching motion during the upper part of the lift. Just got finished with the second set of empty barbell for 15 reps again, and the pain has, the sensation has diminished quite a lot. So my hope is I'm going to do a third set of 15, and then we're going to slowly start tapering up the weight till we hit some singles, and hopefully the pain dissipates by then, but we'll see what happens. Based on what I've experienced in the recent years and months of my different take on training, I would say that working through pain rather than stopping movement altogether is probably one of the key things you can do. So just got done with 135 for single, feeling great. I'm going to be aiming to do about 10 to 15 pound jumps up throughout the warm-ups, just till we hit that single at 8, and that's going to be it for the singles. But what I think one of the things that has helped me with the overhead press is a slightly wider stance and to grip the barbell just outside of the shoulders. If you notice my setup, it's about a thumb width from the knurling, from where the knurling starts on the bar. And that's where I like to grip it. That's what I found most comfortable for me. It allows me to hit the top of the chest and get that shelf to rest on it and then fire up from there. So about halfway through the warm-ups, through the wrist wraps on, I think they help a fair bit, just to alleviate some pain and get a little bit more stability, especially in the overhead press when you have probably one of the longest kinetic chains possible. We're going all the way from the feet till an outstretched overhead position. It's just one of those things where every little bit helps, and I'm not competing, so does it really matter? So we just hit 185 for a single, around RPE 8. I could probably go up about 5 pounds and see how that feels. I put 2.5s on each side. My current overhead press max is 205 for a single. That was tested in May of last year. So we have about, was it 13 months? Okay, so we just got done with 195 for a single. I think that's closer to an RPE 8 than the 185 was. So I'm probably gonna call 185 a 7.5. If technically it felt good, so I think all the reps and all the practice is starting to pay off, and it's starting to be a little bit more refined than it was maybe 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago. It's way more refined than it was 1 year ago when I tested this 205. So I think in the future, once we test this again, I'm going to be really surprised and pleasantly pleased with the results. Another thing I would highly recommend, if possible, don't use a barbell with aggressive center knurling on overhead press, because you have a tendency to scrape up your throat. If it goes for front squats and power cleans, anything like that, I would stick to a barbell that has no center knurling for anything that nears this area, just because you're gonna scratch it up and you're probably gonna graze some skin, and it's not, yeah, you can tough it out, but it's just not fun. I mean, it's not something I want to do on a regular basis. So we just got done with the volume set, 180. I hit 4 reps. It was meant to be RPE 9. That's probably closer to an RPE 9.5. Definitely felt odd in the front neck, collarbone area, but we're able to push through it. Definitely a lot of form breakdown. You probably see it here, as well as I have you'll see it from the side view. There's a lot more layback in there, and my head again just doesn't shoot forward when the barbell comes up. So definitely during fatigue and volume, I have some technical points to work on in the future. But that's a great thing with recording yourself. You're able to get some feedback, as it were, to see what it is. And then next time when you're doing the movement, you can look back and think about what you did well and what you can improve on. So we have our accessory deadlift movement for the week, which again shifts because we're in the latter half of the program. So we're doing 6 reps of stiff-legged deadlifts. Think of the SLDL as kind of like very similar to the Romanian deadlift, except we touch the ground on each and every rep. Some of you will notice I am using heeled squat shoes. I don't think that's too big of an issue, mainly because it's an accessory deadlift movement, so it's not my main accessory movement, and keeping those knees as rigid as possible. Obviously it's loose knees, but you want to try and keep your legs as straight as possible within reason. It helps you with the little bit of lean back. I know some people say try and keep your weight in the middle of your foot. I find for me to get that good stretch and keep the back straight as well as the hamstrings and legs as relatively straight as possible is I like to think of sticking my butt backwards rather than simply bending forward like a regular deadlift. So the idea here is you want to disengage as much of the quad as possible. So you're starting with a hip position that's higher than your regular conventional deadlift. That way you're able to minimize the leg drive coming out of the hole. So the stiff-legged deadlift will feel like a more inefficient deadlift. You'll notice you'll feel more tension in the lower back and the hamstrings. That's probably a sign you're doing it well. It'll also feel like a longer range of motion because your torso is more volume and more practice with the movement without having to overload the weight on the muscle. All right, so halfway through the working sets with the stiff-legged deadlifts, feeling great, feeling a lot more of the stretch in the hamstrings on this movement than the Romanian deadlift. I think that's indicative of just the bigger stretch you get because you're touching the floor each and every time. So we just wrapped up the final set of the stiff leg deadlifts, 285 for sets of 6, RPE 9. Felt really good. Definitely feel some soreness in and fatigue in the hamstrings. Again, I think this first week of the new movement, I like to err on the conservative side for the weights, not really wanting to shoot too far forward. Just like anything, I take the mindset that we're, to use a lack of a better word, we're bodybuilding, we're not body testing, as it were. So how I interpret this is, I always like to leave some reps in the tank, some weight in the tank, because every session shouldn't be a 10. Every session shouldn't be 10 out of 10 effort, bone on bone, the hardest workout you ever had. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to build up a base level of strength. The big point here is look at the macro, the long-term point of view. What you're doing today doesn't necessarily matter, but what you do for the next 5 to 10 years is really what matters. So are you going to burn yourself out in 6 months because you push yourself to 11 out of 10 every single day for 3 hours? That's just unsustainable. So I would argue that take a long-term perspective on your growth, on your strength development, because it puts things into perspective. Do I need to push? Obviously, that doesn't mean I shouldn't push myself hard every single time. Obviously, put in the effort, work smart and work hard. Take an intelligible plan and execute it with all you have. But that plan should include some conservatism with your effort and some actual thought and some recovery. So we're just getting started with the final workout for the day, some close grip bench press. This is going to be a volume focused workout where we get an AMRAP with about 70% of 1 rep max. So again, with the program, this is a testing week for the most part because I haven't done an AMRAP with the close grip flat bench press before. So what is 70% of what? That's one of the limitations with the program. Just got done with the AMRAP volume set for close grip flat bench press. For lack of any better starting point, I used 70% of my 1 rep max for the regular bench press. So we took 70% of 305 pounds. That gave us 213, so I rounded it up. 215, got a set of 12, which is good, probably RPE 8. So again, still testing grounds for the first week. I always like to leave a little bit more in the tank, so I think that was a good result. 215, 12 reps, no shoulder issues, which is even more amazing. So we're gonna drop that weight down to 185 and do 2 more sets of 12, and then we'll call it a day, and that'll be the end of week 6. Okay, so that was the final set of close grip bench press, 195 pounds, set of 12, at around an RPE 9. Close grip bench press, great for developing the triceps while still being somewhat specific to the regular bench press, obviously doing the same movement. You're just changing the the grip width. Much like the wide grip bench press emphasizes the pecs, the close grip bench press starts to shift that emphasis to the triceps while still hitting the chest and the pecs. So that wraps up week 6, day 4, and that's the end of the week. I just have to fit in a GPP day tomorrow, but I'm not really talking about that throughout this video review series, mainly because it's not the real focus or the spotlight of the program. Week 6 wraps up with the introduction of heavy singles and slightly less volume. I haven't looked at the preceding weeks, but we'll figure that out on the next video. But it's nice to introduce the heavy singles again. You can see there's a phasic nature to this program, mainly just 2 phases because it is only 10 weeks. The program is a good break between, say, a strength development phase and a competition or something along those lines, where you don't want to be training the same way day in, day out for a whole year. You want to break up the year into segments, into phases, as it were, where you create different progressions and different goals. So one, for example, it would be to, like here, we have Powerbuilding, where we're combining bodybuilding and powerlifting. It's a nice little transition where we're going to incorporate some high volume work, and then later on we're going to shift to some high intensity work with slightly less volume. So you want to think about that over a year, where you dedicate 3 months to developing strength, then the next 3 months to developing hypertrophy, then the next 3 months you might want to develop strength again, or you might want to take a break for a month, do some completely random training, experiment with CrossFit, bodybuilding, running, strongman. You want to break it up so that you're exposing the body to different training styles and different exercises, so you're not doing the same thing day in, day out, because your body does experience some diminishing marginal returns. The more you do something, the less effective it becomes, while at the same time you still need to keep plowing away at that same thing. To get better at the squat, like everything, you need to do more squats. So with all that said, we're going to wrap up the first week of the last half of the program. Week 6 through 10 will be high intensity focused. So check out my blog, WynnStrength.com. I'll leave the link below. That's where you can find assorted articles when I come across some interesting findings, as well as a weekly write-up of my training overview. It's a little bit more frequent than the videos, a bit more up-to-date. I'll also leave links to the Barbell Medicine guys, barbellmedicine.com. Comment below if you are on one of the templates, if you've done them before, or if you're doing the Powerbuilding 2 template or any other Powerbuilding template. What's different with your training program to my training program? Thanks for watching, like always, and remember, a better life through strength.